All right, it being 6:30, I will call to order a meeting of the Oregon School District Board of Education. It is Monday, January 10th, 2022, our first meeting of the year. We are in the OSD Innovation Center of Oregon High School. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Bijak? Here. Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Mr. Mehring?
Here.
Dr. Lakuta?
Here.
Mr. LeBrun?
Here.
Mr. Pankratz?
Present.
Ms. Flanagan?
Here, the board does have a quorum, and I just received from Ms. Heitz that we do have proof of notice, so this meeting has been duly noticed. We do have a full agenda tonight. We have 5 items on our action items for C, and then we do have a bunch of donations, which I will read in a little bit, but I will first entertain a motion to approve the agenda before us tonight. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Katie, could you please call the roll because Heather is on the phone?
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Mr. Mehring? Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Next on the agenda is our consent calendar, and I will read the donations that we do have. We have $532 donation for the Oregon Brooklyn Splash Pad from Pelletary Waste Systems. We have $200 for Brooklyn Elementary from Stephen Harlan Staten. We have $2,808 for the Oregon Brooklyn Splash Pad for 3 large spray cap geysers from Tri-County Appliance. We have a $4,500 donation for Netherwood Knoll RCI Orchestra, Netherwood Knoll 3rd grade team, and Netherwood Knoll 4th grade from Avid Charitable Foundation. We have $50 for the Oregon High School Band Program from S. Brisky. We have $30 for the Oregon High School Band Program from Amy Eager. We have $100 for the Oregon High School Band Program from Oak Bank. We have $100 for the Oregon High School Band Program from Anki Boudreau. We have $50 for the Oregon Middle School Band Program from Aaron Gruns. We have $200 for the Oregon Middle School Band Program from Dawn Palmer. We have $50 for the Oregon Middle School Band Program from Christine and Terry Hoffman. $50 for the Oregon Middle School Band Program from Ardell and Sandra Wiederhoff. $500 for the OHS Student Council Holiday Family Support Fundraiser from the Vondra Living Trust. $200 for the Oregon Brooklyn Splash Pad Paver from Allison Kolsch. We have $200 for the Oregon Brooklyn Splash Pad Paver from John and Patricia Mahler. $50 for the splash pad from Jennifer and Tom Voss. $100 for the splash pad from Randy and William McLeod. $200 for a splash pad fence section from Ben and Laney Eustace. $20 for the splash pad from Rebecca Furkey. $400 for the Oregon Brooklyn Splash Pad Paver 2 from Swinehart Plumbing. $500 for Oregon Brooklyn Splash Pad Bench from Omni Technologies LLC. $1,872 for the Oregon Brooklyn Splash Pad from All Color Powder Coating Incorporated. And then $100 from Gina Jonan for the A-Team Scholarship, $100 from Erica Mundinger for the A-Team Scholarship, and $100 from John Tanner for the A-Team Scholarship. So thank you so much for all of those individuals and entities for supporting the Oregon School District. We really appreciate that. And with that, I will, and we do also have a field trip request on there, which I think the board received, and so you had a chance to review that. So I will entertain a motion for the consent calendar.
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the consent calendar or any abstentions? Okay, hearing none. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Mr. Mehring?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Next on the agenda is B, information items, and tonight we have a very special presentation. We have someone that's going to be a graduate that we are going to honor with their diploma tonight. So I will turn it over to Dr. Bergstrom.
Thank you. This is really exciting, and that is we have a night school graduate who is coming to us this evening to receive her diploma. For those of you who aren't familiar, our night school program is Tuesdays from 4 to 6, and it's run by Jennifer Schmidt, who runs really all of our blended learning programming. And you do not need to be someone who could have graduated from the Oregon High School. You only need to currently live in the Oregon School District community to be eligible for our night school program. And tonight we are going to honor our most recent graduate, and her name is Erica Narf, and I'll ask her in just a moment to come up, and we'll take a nice picture as a memento for her family. because she worked with Jen Schmidt and worked very hard to meet our graduation requirements. She already had a huge head start, so there wasn't as much to do as one might think, but she put a lot of time and energy into this during the pandemic, no less. And so Jen worked with her on finishing her diploma virtually. And she had the program recommended to her from her son, who was an Oregon graduate, who said, you should really check out their alternative programs and see if they have something for you. And we did. And so now Erica Narf is our latest Oregon School District graduate. So I'd like to give her a round of applause and then meet her right up at the banner for a handing of her diploma. Congratulations, Erica. Here is your Oregon High School diploma. You are now a high school graduate. Get some pictures of this. And then we need to get Ms. Schmidt up here too. And now you get to do that?
I went to my first classes in nursing school today.
Picture of the two of you together. And a future nurse, no less. So thank you very much. We're all very happy for you. Thank you.
All right, great way to start the evening. Okay, next on the agenda is public comment. We do not have anyone registered for public comment, to my understanding. Is there anyone here for public comment? Asking one more time, is there anyone here for public comment? Okay, moving on. OEA report. I believe we do have representatives from the OEA, and we'll ask them to come up to the microphone. Thank you.
All right, so we have a couple of statements to bring to you tonight. First off, I'm Nathan Johnson. I'm here tonight in my capacity as the lead negotiator for the Oregon Education Association. I'm also a teacher at the high school. And I just wanted to share a little bit back from our negotiations team in light of the fact that we've got that on the agenda here tonight at the school board. We'd like to share that we really appreciate the bind that the district was put in this year, the challenge placed upon the district, where zero increase in state funding this year and trying to figure out how to manage a budget when there's no increase in funding. That while there was one-time federal dollars to manage the pandemic, with no baseline ongoing increase in money, such a challenging year to figure out how to fund a district, how to pay your staff, how to pay all your bills when you're not getting any increase in funding. We recognize that incredible challenge this year. And we acknowledge that even though we couldn't look at ongoing money and increases on an ongoing basis, the district went above and beyond this year to really find money to recognize the incredible work that our teachers and all our staff have been doing under unprecedented circumstances right now. And we appreciate that the district really looked and scrounged and scavenged for the money they could find to really recognize the hard work that's happening this year. And we recognize from you just how important that was and valued from the district's end to find that money to recognize that. Now, we also do want to look forward that we recognize that next year may be another very challenging year, that we're looking at inflationary pressures on cost of living, and we're also looking at potentially another very challenging set of circumstances coming in terms of the amount of funding that our district has. And we recognize that the district may need to explore alternate avenues and creative ways to figure out how to both address healthcare funding for next year, our insurance funding, as well as funding for staffing. But we certainly want to be your partners in creatively figuring out how we can make sure that we're still finding the ways to compensate our staff next year in these challenging times, both financially as well as logistically. And we want to acknowledge just how clear it is from the board, from the district administration, from our community, from our families, from our students, how everybody in Oregon values education And as much as there may be these challenges that we deal with in relation to funding, we know that this is a community where teachers and education are valued, and we never want to lose sight of that. And we want to continue to work together to find these creative solutions to make things work financially and logistically, and see what we can do going forward to sort through all of this, despite the ongoing challenges that are put upon us from the state level.
Okay. And I'm Jennifer Ehrlich, and I teach at the high school, and I'm a member of the Oregon Education Association Board of Directors, and I have a statement to read. The Oregon Education Association Board of Directors, as the duly elective representatives of the teachers of the Oregon School District, remains committed to creating a learning environment that prioritizes student health and safety while delivering an optimal educational experience to our learners. To this end, the Oregon Education Association fully supports the continuation of in-person learning as long as two significant factors continue to be considered. First, we must have enough staff present in a building to safely open each day. Thus far, we've been able to find guest teachers, substitutes, and/or have other teachers cover for absent staff members. Although almost all of our educators are fully vaxxed and boosted, and the majority of other staff are as well, we know that breakthrough cases are on the rise and still require isolation. With that in mind, we know our administrators are continuously monitoring the staffing level for each building. While teachers have been willing to assist with coverage when they are able, and at some levels that need has been very frequent, there are limits to how much teacher prep time and administrator time can be sacrificed to cover vacant classrooms. It is possible that it may become impossible to cover all absences and/or that doing so would require every present staff member to give up any prep periods and/or lunch. That is not sustainable, especially given the already increased workload this year. Beyond this, in our special education areas, it has already been especially challenging to adequately staff some buildings many days when both addressing teacher and paraprofessional absences. Should it happen that not enough staff can be present to reasonably and safely cover the learners in every classroom, we would support a pivot to distance learning for a time period until adequate staffing is again available. As with our community, our strong preference is for in-person learning, but we also know that we need enough adults in a building to ensure that we can stay open safely. Secondly, we strongly advocate that one of the most important tools towards keeping our doors open through this current surge is effective masking. By mitigating spread within schools, we can set up our district for success in keeping our buildings adequately staffed, with the additional perk of keeping as many students as possible in school for the highest quality learning experience. Finally, we encourage every learner who is able to be vaccinated and boosted. We strongly support the science that indicates that vaccines are safe and effective. By having a large portion of our students protected by vaccine, serious cases would be limited as well as the overall transmission of the virus. Therefore, we ask the community to partner with us in the effort to keep schools fully open by having their students vaccinated and boosted to the fullest extent possible.
Thank you, Nate and Jen. All right, next item on the agenda is for student report. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Bergstrom just to talk about where we're going with the student involvement.
I will give a more thorough update in the superintendent's report, but the good news is we had 34 applicants for the superintendent's council, and we're going to find a way for every one of those people to be involved, because I think the more voices, more input, the better off we will be as a school system. And we'll be having our introductory meeting next week. And so I think that from that group, we'll have a rotating representative to come here and talk about things that are happening within the school that are important for all students to know about, and certainly for us to know about. So just wanted to let you know that we have a representative or two on the way, and I'm really excited about the possibilities.
Great, thank you. And we've also Leslie and I have also talked about potentially having a rotating board member attend some of the council meetings as well. It's really important that the board hears firsthand from students what issues are important to them at the board meeting as well as at that council meeting too. And just so you know, she'll talk about, but the representatives in that meeting are not just leaders of clubs. It's students that want to be involved And so it's not, it's a cross-section of students, so I'm really excited about that moving forward. Okay, moving on to C, action items. Number 1 on the agenda is ratification of the 2021-2022 OEA Collective Bargaining Agreement. I will turn that over to Dr. Bergstrom,
And
or sorry, to Gina, right?
President Flanagan, before you do that, I'm going to step away from the board table. I have a conflict of interest with both C1 and C2, as my wife Kelly currently holds a contract as a teacher with the district.
All right, so noted. Board Member Pankratz will be stepping away from the table for action items 1 and 2. Okay, thank you. Gina?
Thank you. And I want to thank Nate and the bargaining team and Laura Stoller as president for their work through this process, as well as Andy Weiland. I think I've been bargaining for 20 years, and this was, I would say, my hardest bargain in the sense that we know how amazing all of our staff have been through this pandemic and all the things we've asked them to do. And to be in a position where we don't have any reoccurring money for long-term wages was really, really hard for us to be in. And I know as board members, you felt that too. And I would say that I'm appreciative to work for a board and in a district where we're all a team, and that we have that level of collaboration and partnership where we can talk about that with the union, and that people understand the position that we're in, and that it in no way reflects the value or the recognition that we have for our staff for this year. So it was very difficult, but I do appreciate that the union has been at the table and been partners and been listening very carefully to our budget picture. So what we had to share with them was not a surprise. And so what we reached a tentative agreement that the union did ratify. And so tonight we're asking you to ratify as well. And what we settled on is the WERC, which is the state agency that regulates bargaining. They tell us what our CPI is for that contract year. And so the CPI was 1.23%. So that's the max amount of increase on base wages you can have without going to referendum. So we took the 1.23% number, and what we talked about is that we would give a stipend in the equivalent to the educators that are not only within the educator compensation system, but also above what we call off schedule, meaning their salaries are higher than the model. And so we did reach a tentative agreement on that, that we would do a one-time payment in the amount equivalent of 1.23% for each educator in the OEA. And that would be funded with the money the one-time money we received from the federal government in terms of from our budget. We also talked about that if we do receive reoccurring money from the state in the future, and we are able to put that on the schedule, that would be one of our priorities to do so. So that is our understanding with the OEA as well, and we have sent them a letter to that effect.
All right, thank you, Ms. Jonan. Right now, I will open it up to the board for a motion to be put on the table in a second, and then we can have further discussion if so desired.
I'll move that the resolution be approved as agreed in, as Gina has described.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? All right, hearing none. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Mr. Maring?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 6-0. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, supplemental compensation for staff. Leslie, do you want to run through there, or would you like me to take that?
Go right ahead, President
Okay.
Flanagan.
All right, so this is the second part of what Gina had referenced, is that we do have the collective bargaining agreement, but for this additional, what we'd like to do is for regularly employed staff not part of the OEA collective bargaining agreement, which means non-represented licensed educators, administrative assistants, custodians, district support, food service staff, paraprofessionals, administrators. We would also give the stipend in the amount of 1.23% of their regularly contracted salary or wage rate, and that would be payable in February. And then for all regularly employed staff described above and also educators represented by the OEA, the board would like to have an additional stipend in the amount of $1,500 for full-time staff and prorated for part-time staff. So I just want to say a few things. The board recognizes that this has been probably one of the most difficult years anyone who works for this district has ever had, and it's continuing. We have a lot of plates that are spinning as we try to care for our students and teach our students. And then you add a pandemic onto that, and you add increased mental health needs. This is really a difficult position we've put our staff in, and it's nobody's fault. Here's where we are. But we really value the work that the staff does as part of this district. You are revered in this district in terms of how you care for our students, and the board really wants you to understand that we see the work that you are doing. We see that you're not able to take vacations, and we really want to make a statement about how we value you. We want you to stay with this district, and we're going to do what we can to make sure that this picture improves in the future. And we will be having a board meeting, a committee of the whole on February 1st to really talk about staff wellness, staffing, so we can start preparing for the future and having discussions with you about what we can do and how we can think creatively to make sure that you remain with our district. So that's what I would like to say. So I will entertain a motion, and then board members can speak to it as well.
I'll make that motion, Krista.
Okay, Heather with the motion. Is there a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. I will open the floor if any other board members would. Heather, do you want to start? Do you want to say anything?
Since I'm remote, I will not say anything, but strongly in favor of this, and thank you to all the teachers.
Okay,
Educators.
thank you. Sorry for putting you on the spot. Any other board members? Go ahead, Anna.
I really appreciate your comments, Krista, because it's the absolute truth. You know, this is money. This doesn't necessarily take away all of the issues, but this is one way that we can show the value that we feel all of our educators and staff bring to our students, to our families, to our community. And you know, I think we were all hoping that this year was going to be so much better than last year because we're in person. And I guess what I've recognized is that that's not been the case. And I don't think anyone was really prepared for that. I don't think anybody could be prepared for that. And I just want educators, all of the staff, to know we see you and we value you. And thank you so much for all that you are doing with your curriculum, with your connecting with our students, and with supporting our families. So thank you.
Mary, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to also say that we recognize that the educators really have had to completely reinvent their jobs, the work that they do on a daily basis, from pivoting to instantly virtual, then into a hybrid scenario, then to in-person, but with additional considerations. And with the in-person, there's also the partial virtual because people are quarantined or isolated, and it just makes your job so much more challenging, and we do recognize that and very much appreciate it.
Thank you, Mary. Tim or Kevin? You good?
Yeah, I think it goes without saying. We just reiterate the same thing and don't want it to be reflected that, you know, I'm not going to speak for Tim, but we appreciate everyone's efforts. And, you know, things are changing constantly as well. Information seems to be variable. And kids are under a lot of stress, and you're dealing with that on a day-to-day basis. We see it in our homes. We see it in the news, and we know what's going on in the district. So we appreciate everything that y'all have done. And again, as Anna said, it's money at the end of the day, but I think what's most important is it reflects that you understand that we really appreciate everything you've done.
Go ahead, Tim.
I would echo what everyone else has said, certainly. It's important to understand, too, that the decision to do what we could was not a difficult decision. The decision to how we were going to come up with the money was the most challenging. And we know that will continue to be a challenge in the coming year. We do sincerely appreciate what our district employees across the district have had to do over the last year and a half, almost 2 years now. And as Kevin mentioned, as each person mentioned, money's a portion of what we're hoping to remind you of your value. And so thank you all for what you've been doing for our families and for our kids and for each other. We really do appreciate it.
Well said. All right. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak? Yes. Mr. Maring? Yes. Dr. Lakuta? Yes. Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 6-0. All right.
Okay, so as you all know, WASB convention is next week, scheduled for next week. I'm serving as our delegate this year, and in the packet is the summary of the resolutions that are up for the vote. I will be attending the delegate meeting, and we'll be voting on these resolutions. So I guess what I'm looking for is input from the board on how we want to handle those resolutions. So I'll just do a quick overview, and then we can open it up to any discussion if necessary. So there are 10 resolutions. The first one is safe harbor legislation to protect child sex trafficking victims. The next 2 resolutions are regarding school funding. There is an advanced learning resolution, which, as you'll remember, Oregon authored that one. So the good work of Amy Miller, she authored that. There is one addition to that resolution, and I'd like to read that just because it is a little different than what we had approved back in the summer. So they did amend that resolution to add the following sentence. The WASB encourages that schools focus less on identifying gifted students and more on identifying and addressing unmet learning needs of students capable of high levels of achievement. And then it goes on to back to our original resolution, which is the following. The WASB further encourages districts to provide a variety of advanced programming opportunities for K-12 students, including acceleration options, and to offer opportunities to individuals such that students from every background are able to achieve at their highest possible levels. The next couple of resolutions are regarding mental health services and broadening the scope of those services. There's a resolution on curriculum for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. And then there's a resolution related to the WASB national presence and our involvement with the National Association of School Boards. If you remember, I think it was back during the summer, maybe fall, there was a bit of a disconnect between the Wisconsin Association of School Boards and the National Association of School Boards. And so this resolution allows the Wisconsin School Board Association to distance itself from the National Association if the Board of Directors chooses to do so. And then the last 2 resolutions are just also related to that National Association, basically cleaning up or updating some language to match that, to support the that distancing. So that's an overview. I guess my recommendation or my motion would be for the board to support all 10 of those resolutions at the WASB convention.
All right, so we have a motion. Is there a second? And then we can have a discussion. Do I have a second to Troy's motion?
I'll second.
Okay, Mary has a second, and I'll open it up for questions or discussion. Does anyone have questions or discussion for Troy? Go ahead, Tim.
I was focused first on the advanced learning resolution. It was a little discouraging to me. It was discouraging me to put less focus, to do anything less than what we're already doing, as opposed to putting more focus on one thing to actually take away from another. And I'm not so sure that I would agree with that. The fact is the program funding was more than doubled this year, which means there's more focus than there was last year. And so I'm not sure that the language that encourages less focus on gifted and talented is what we're shooting for here. That's just my opinion.
Troy, I'm going to go ahead and have you answer that since you're the delegate, and then others can weigh in if they'd like.
Okay, I guess, Tim, I interpret it a bit differently than you read it. So I think the intent is that we are not trying to identify certain students, but we're trying to address a broader range of students. All students who have unmet learning needs, which goes far beyond just trying to identify those advanced or small group of advanced learners. I don't know if Dr. Bergstrom or anyone else wants to weigh in on that as well, but I think I have a different interpretation of that. I think it's not so much narrowing the focus, it's broadening the focus to meet more students' needs.
Dr. Bergstrom, I'll turn to you, and then I know Anna.
Troy, that's the interpretation that I had from this particular resolution also. They're making sure that we're thinking broadly and not just the small number of students who may be identified as gifted, but actually to think in an all-encompassing way, and that is all of our students have a gift in one way or another, and we should be looking for it and encouraging it, which actually fits really well with our mission. I think we actually have it in there a couple of places. And it is also in our definition of equity, is that we're looking for the gifts, and we're honoring the gifts that all of our kids bring, and looking for program to enhance all of those things. So I thought is bigger, not smaller also, but I certainly understand Tim's interpretation.
Tim, go ahead.
So for someone in the gifted and talented program last year, for instance, how would this language change the future for that person?
It would not. And we call it advanced learning. We don't refer to it as a gifted and talented, even though this language does. But no, it wouldn't change any of our programming. It would just encourage us to be even more open regarding how we are looking at kids' talents and what is being identified as something that needs advanced programming.
Anna, I think you're first, and then Kevin.
Yeah, I guess my interpretation is that there might be going away from the traditional determination of a gifted student. You know, if you are considered a gifted student, it means you've gotten a certain test score on a math test, for example. And instead of looking at it narrowly on performance of a math exam, for example, it's looking more at a student's, the whole child, and where they might have a high level of achievement in an area outside of math, let's just say. Maybe it's art, maybe it's, you know, I'm just throwing out examples. But I think the idea is to get away from the traditional explanation or traditional definition of gifted students, and to instead focus on meeting the unmet learning needs of students capable of high levels of achievement. So that's, I think the intent is to just broaden that beyond the traditional understanding of gifted programming.
Go ahead, Kevin, and then we do have comment from Amy.
Okay. I had the same take on this as Tim did, frankly. I don't know why the language, and I don't know what opportunity there is to suggest different language, but I don't know why the language can't say in addition to instead of less of. Because when it talks about addressing unmet learning needs of students capable of high levels of achievement, maybe I'm reading too much into that. That suggests to me a kid that maybe a learner that is not achieving the levels that the educators see is they're capable for them, where typically advanced learners are already on that journey. So again, maybe it's semantics at the end of the day, but I worry about our education system nationally and making things easier, especially through these pandemic times, what have you, where I mean, of course we want the playing field leveled and what have you, but I also think that we need to push people that want to excel and have the ability to excel, and I just think it's language that could have been better chosen.
Go ahead, Dr. Bergstrom.
Well, just so everyone knows, if Amy is not here, she is always watching. Because I received a text right away where she said, the goal is not the label, right? So the goal is never about the label. The goal is identifying the learning needs of all students, and then being in the business of talent development. finding out what talents there are for all children and developing those without the need for a label.
I think what I'll also say too is, it's our job and we do that. We look through the lens of the Oregon School District where Amy has done an amazing job developing this program and having had kids in this program. It challenges our learners to whoever they are, to accomplish more if they're capable of accomplishing more. And so I also think this is something statewide, and we tend to look through our lens of, because we've got an Amy Miller in this program and it's been so developed, other districts aren't there. And so this is a statewide resolution, and that we still make decisions for the Oregon School District as the Oregon School Board. And this is a statewide resolution. So any other questions? Well taken, Tim. Good discussion.
So just for clarification, what Amy brought to the table in her work was the second paragraph, and what was added was the first paragraph. Is that right? Okay, so our perspective as a district was paragraph 2. I totally understand what you're saying. I think the resolution itself is poorly worded. The rationale is understood. The language in the resolution is poorly worded.
And that's
in my
good.
opinion.
That's really good feedback, because Troy, that's his job as the WASB delegate, is that he can voice that in the assembly as person that is the district that was the author of the bill. Here's something that we have that this could be worded, because it may change intent. So
Absolutely.
Absolutely good discussion, and that's Troy's job.
Absolutely, because it's the resolution that ends up in the language going forward, not the rationale. So that's my only point.
Any other questions? Things that you pointed out, Tim?
I do have
Okay.
separate topic. Resolution 2208 with regards to the national presence, the National School Board Association. I find it curious that it doesn't require leaving the National School Board Association, whereas I think the Wisconsin Association of School Boards made the choice to, Dr. Bergstrom, maybe you can help me with what the Wisconsin Association of School Boards decided to do when the issue took place late this summer or early this fall, when they stepped away from the National School Board Association. Because the language here does not require leaving the national school. It does not require a statement. It allows riding the line.
So, Tim, I can give you my opinion on that. I think that the resolution is set up to allow the WASB Board of Directors to make that decision based on the the intent or the guiding principles of the organization. So I think they're looking for that flexibility to be able to make that decision as needed, because previously, as the guiding principles were written, they didn't have that flexibility to take action if the disconnect that happened in the fall were to happen again.
But it's our vote that sends our message in terms of support or not, correct? It's how we vote on this resolution that sends the message of our intent. And if we vote for this, we're advocating our intent. That's my only point.
I guess how I respond to that is, my understanding is that the WASB suspended their membership from the national based on an action, right? And so what they're saying is, we know that that was one action, but we're not going to sever this national presence that we have, because there's value in national associations advocating. And so we're asking, as your duly elected board of directors, like the Oregon School Board is a duly elected board, to give us the authority to say, we are still going to have a national presence, and then we are going to make a decision at a point in the future if we want to rejoin the National Association of School Boards. So I feel comfortable as an Oregon School Board giving the Wisconsin Association of School Boards board that authority. I'm in favor of that resolution.
That's all I have.
Anyone have any other questions? for Troy? Okay, Katie, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Pankratz? Yes. Dr. Lakuda? Yes. Ms. Bijak? Yes. Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Mr. Maring? Yes. Mr. LeBrun?
No.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 6-1. All right, moving on to C action item 4, health and safety measures. As you recall, I put this on the agenda because as usual,
Hello, everybody. So we'll start off by talking about what we will be talking about, and that is we'll go over our county and our school district data, the updated health guidance, which includes quarantine updates, what we've done as far as drive-through PCR testing, because that was a really big step, and then action steps that we need to be discussing regarding how we move forward. So we always center ourselves with what is it we are trying to do. And the OEA mentioned it tonight also, and that is our goal is to have safe in-person learning to keep our students in school with minimal disruption. So what do we need to do to make that happen? Well, first we have to look at our local data, and we have to understand what that data is. When we first discussed back in the November 22nd board meeting is when we first discussed, should we begin the consideration of peeling back a layer of one of our safety strategies? Because the numbers, as far as active cases, were on a downward trend to the point where we expected by the next time we had a meeting, we would move from the high to the medium category. That was really the expectation at that time, especially as people were starting to get, our younger students, I think 12 and up, were starting to be able to be vaccinated at that time. Well, unfortunately, it didn't go that way at all, right? So instead of moving to the medium category, we are now in the critically high. And I'll talk a little more tonight about what goes into that particular number. And you can see the Dane County data in the blue and the gold, and the impact of the last month on the number of cases within Dane County. And then also the fact that there's been an increase in the number of people in the hospital, and how the stress that has put on our systems in general. I think our percent positivity in Dane County is at the highest level ever. At the end of the January 4th time period, we had a 14.3% positivity level. That's the first for the pandemic. And we were averaging 4,799 tests a day. And that's a lot, and that's a good thing. Tests are a good thing because it means that people are monitoring their health and they're making sure that they are not in a status where they could be making other people sick. So the number of tests is a good thing. The number of them coming back positive indicates that there's quite a bit of virus circulating within the community or within the county. So how has that played out in our schools? And it's played out quite significantly. Right now, district-wide, we have 76 people who are out because they are currently positive for COVID. However, that does not count the number of staff members, as an example, who are out because their child is positive for COVID, or their child's daycare has closed, or regular things that cause people to be absent, right? So while that number is significantly higher than we've seen, I think we've had it as low as 10 in the past. It's way, way higher. I think just looking at the number of cases to date is really where you see the jump. Katie, I believe you said it jumped 170 in the last week?
The overall cumulative.
The overall cumulative number of cases. Now, you might say, how could that happen? Well, we'll be talking in just a moment about how the CDC, DHS, and now public health guidance related to quarantine and isolation has gone from 10 days to 5. So it's possible for some of our positive cases, depending on when we find out or when it's reported to us, to not even be included in the current, because that's a 7-day cycle. So consequently, the current positive cases tells one story, but the number of positive cases to date and the leap in that number tells us another, because that also tells us the number of people who aren't counted in the current positive because of how the count falls. So, needless to say, there are a lot of absent children and there are a lot of absent staff members. So, from our students, we definitely saw increased transmission from winter break. And this is what we want to emphasize is the box in yellow. The increased cases, they're not happening because of transmission within schools. We've had certain situations where we've had masks off in an athletic activity when they should have been pulled up, or we've had kids at lunch together, or we've had someone in the classroom who's had a hard time wearing a mask regularly. So we have had opportunities, small numbers of transmissions within schools. The vast majority of what we're seeing is coming from activities that are outside of school. So that's why winter break for both students and staff led to a really big increase, right? Because it was winter break and we were able for the first time for many of us to see family members, et cetera. And it led to some increased case numbers. For our students, household close contacts, that's really where a lot of our student absences are coming from. It's from someone in the family getting it and then the rest of the family getting it. And like I said, we've had a few coming from sports. For our staff, as I mentioned, not only winter break, but child illnesses, and their child's illness has been an issue, as has childcare closures. So our principals and the staff that they work with, because we have some wonderful people in every building who are trying to play, as Ms. Majeski put it in a Sunday morning email, in a giant game of Jenga every morning, and trying to figure out who's covering which class period. And it is a significant challenge because many of our students do much better when they have consistency. But we can't, if a teacher is out, we can't necessarily guarantee consistency because there may not be a substitute and it may be a different person every hour. So thus far, I'd say that everybody working in schools have been absolute champions at making it work. Just champions. Our paraprofessionals all have substitute licenses. So we're moving people from paraprofessional positions to teaching positions. People are giving up their prep periods to be able to cover for other people. And I'm also going to say our kids are being champions because this is not easy for them either. Is it better than them being at home? Yes, it is. It is absolutely better. But it is it's a challenge every single morning. So we're always talking about what are the next strategies we can try so that every classroom is covered. So I guess I just can't emphasize that enough. We're 100% committed to our kids getting in-person instruction, but it is a crazy dance every single morning because as soon as the principals think it's all covered, somebody else has to call in. And once again, our community is pretty darn wonderful because there's a lot of vaccinations happening that are really helping to keep the numbers down. Because you saw from the chart that it's less likely if someone has been vaccinated and boosted. So as we know from before, 76 and 78% of the middle school and the high school students respectively, almost all of our professional staff. But look at the number for the ages 5 to 11. The last time you saw this, I think it was 25%, right around there. It's at 62% completing 2 primary doses. So, yeah, that's very good news. Now, we know the lay of the land and how it's impacting our students, how it's impacting our staff. Here is the preamble to 565 and 566, which is something that the board has adopted in August of 2020 and revised on January 3rd of 22. And you see that, you know, we need to use a variety of broad data points to help us make decisions. And all of the health guidance experts are still saying the same thing, which is schools can continue to operate in an era of high transmission as long as they're using layered safety mitigation strategies to keep the transmission out of school. And that's still exactly what we are doing. And that's our layers, just for everybody's, just so everyone remembers. Our layers are, of course, vaccination, vaccination for those who are able, masking, hand washing, hygiene, proper ventilation, distancing as much as possible, all of the things that are helping keep us in alignment with our goal of kids learning in person. So, what are some of the key points then? There's a continuation of the universal masking recommendation, regardless of the vaccination status. There's a continuation of the federal requirement for masks on transportation. And there's a public health mask mandate that was extended until February 1st. For quarantine, due to the updated guidance, and not all schools in the area have started utilizing this guidance, but we started right away, and that was reducing the quarantine timeline from 10 to 5 days as long as symptoms are improving. However, days 6 through 10 after a positive case must be very, very strict masking. Otherwise, people should not be out of their isolation yet. And then, of course, there's differentiation based on vaccination status too. So if you are a close contact and you are vaccinated, then, and we've talked about this before, you're not required to quarantine unless you become symptomatic. Here's what's different though, is they've begun to change what it counts as vaccinated. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. And then continued layered strategies such as the 3 feet of distancing. And when you can't do 3 feet, then you should focus as much as possible on the other measures, which makes sense. You take away one measure, you should make sure you're particularly vigilant on the others. So here's what the updated quarantine guidance looks like. And this was really important because if we hadn't had this, I think there would have been another 18 staff members who wouldn't have been able to start school after winter break. So it's been important, and I think that, you know, in our masked environment, this will work for us. So you're not required to quarantine if you are an adult and you've had your primary vaccinations and your booster. So that's the difference now, and part of the guidance is the booster for adults is what considers them to be. The official definition of fully vaccinated hasn't changed. However, it's changed in the sense of who is not required to quarantine. Our students in ages 5 through 7 don't have to quarantine if they've completed their primary vaccination series. And then you do not have to quarantine if you've had a case of COVID in the last 90 days. And this is all assuming, of course, that there are no symptoms, because if there are symptoms, you begin quarantine. And that those who must, as I said, are people who have symptoms, people who haven't been through the vaccination process, or students who have not completed the series, or adults who have not been boosted. And this all came from the CDC, then to DHS, then to public health. So it went down through the change, and we adopted it right away when it first came from the CDC. And then how we're helping families, because I think every one of us probably at some point in the last few weeks has felt frustration regarding where am I supposed to be able to go to get a test. So thanks to Gina working very hard with Fitchburg Pharmacy over winter break. They have been wonderful partners. And now they are here 5 days a week in the Prairie View and Netherwood lot. And it's for our families and our students. You pre-register, but then you just show a QR code when you get there. Originally, we were hoping for 24-hour results, but there's a bit of a backlog in testing. So now it's 2 to 3 days to get the results from this. And all the instructions are on the district website. The first day we had 90 people through, not just cars. Second day was 90. Third day was 84. The fourth day was 86, and today was 100. So it's very, very busy. So for our action steps, we recommend maintaining our health guidance and protocols because as I said, people aren't getting COVID in our schools, and that's a really good thing. Continually reviewing and updating all the latest guidance, encouraging people to continue to take the Panther Pledge each day and stay home if they have symptoms. Consider, if they are able, getting vaccinated and boosted. And of course, we'll continue our work to support staff, which is recruiting substitutes. That's a really important piece. Continuing to spread the word about the fact that we need substitutes. And to continue to share appreciation, because as was mentioned today when we spoke about the stipends, this has been challenging, and I think kind words go a very long way. And so thanks to our communication director, Erica Mundinger, we started something called Appreciation Station, which is just a link that people can go to on our website, and they fill out a note about someone to whom they want to show appreciation. And then Michelle Brzak, who works in our district office, makes these, this is an example, makes these lovely cards that contain the words that somebody filled out on the link. And it's sent out to teachers and principals and even district office staff. So it's been a great way for people to show appreciation for all that's happening. And, you know, we want to be able to tell our families and our students that we appreciate them too. So then, given where we're at, here's what we would recommend as we move forward. Similar to where we were on November 22nd, when we expected that we were moving into the medium category for the Department of Health Services for the County of Dane, what we would say is that we should begin to peel back mitigation strategies such as the mask requirement when we reach the medium category and have stayed there for 7 days. This would allow transmission to decline, would keep us aligned to our goal of keeping our kids in school, allow for some stability in staffing, because until the numbers decline a little bit, we're going to continue to see an impact on the staffing, allow a time for people who are eligible and want to get boosters. Then as we see the downward trajectory, that's when we'll start planning once again for a phased approach to peeling back safety strategies. And remember last time, I think we talked about it about 6 weeks ahead of when we expected to do it. And then all of the plans got completely upended by the increasing numbers. And then, of course, we recommend that we are complying with the CDC order on masks on school transportation, too. So our recommendation is that even when the mask order is repealed, that we maintain all of our safety layers until we are approaching medium, and then we start planning, stay there, and then peel back our first strategy. And this is different. We haven't spoken about a category or a designation in the past. And so this is just something to consider that is something slightly more concrete than what we have used as an indicator in the past.
Okay, what I'm going to do is going around the room and kind of see where people are at and have any questions. Troy, I'm going to start with you.
No questions, I don't think, at this time. Do you You want comments, or should we go to others for questions first?
If you have comments, if you want to put a motion on the floor, the floor is yours for that.
Okay, so I guess one comment, I just want to reiterate how great it is that we've got PCR testing in this community now. I think huge kudos to Gina for making that happen. I think that's just a tremendous help in battling COVID in the community. You know, in my discussions with principals and teachers and students over the past several weeks, I mean, where we are today, it's, as was mentioned before, it's just, I don't see it as being sustainable. I can't fathom removing any of these mitigation strategies at this point. You know, there's such a strain on the system. Masks are helping us in a lot of different ways. We know that masks are not perfect. However, in my opinion, they're very important, a very important part to keeping our kids in school. So with all that being said, I would like to get some certainty to the time frame on the table with all of the uncertainty that's out there. I know that might be difficult, but I would like to put a motion on the table to edit our policy 566. What I would move to say is that the first paragraph would remain as written. The second paragraph would be revised as following. Except that face coverings will not be required indoors and instead will be strongly encouraged, except when not required by local, state, or federal law and/or orders. When Dane County COVID-19 level of transmission is moderate or lower, but no earlier than the following dates: March 7th, 2022, grades 7-12, and while actively playing or performing during optional events, and March 28th, 2022, grades 4K through 6. So just to, I guess, restate that.
Yes, please.
What's been added is after the federal law and orders section, when Dane County COVID-19 level of transmission is moderate or lower, but no earlier than the following dates. And then bullet point number 1 would be March 7th, 2022, grades 7 through 12, and while actively playing or performing during optional events. And then the second bullet point would be March 28th, 2022, grades 4K through 6.
Okay, so Troy has put a motion on the floor. The first thing I'll ask for, is there a second? I'll second that. All right, we have a motion and a second. Now the floor is open for questions or discussion. Go ahead, Kevin.
So my first question, Troy, is you talked about having more certainty, and I kind of get the idea and the concept of tying it to levels. But what I don't understand is tying it to a random date. What's significant about March 7th? And how do you know what's going to happen between now and March 7th?
Yeah, we don't. I mean, we don't. I guess in my logic, I'm somewhat tying it to what we did on November 22nd, where we picked a date. It was, at that point, I think it was 7 weeks out in the future. This time around, I'm picking a date 8 weeks out in the future. It's, you know, I can't say where we're going to be at in a week. I can't say where we're going to be at in 4 weeks or 8 weeks. But I would like to see some certainty so that our staff and our community has some level of understanding of the direction that we're going. So that's my logic behind it. I also have separated 7-12 and 4K through 6, again, to allow for kind of stepping this in to kind of test the system and make sure that the logistics can handle it as we phase it in. March 28th happens to be the Monday after spring break, so we get a 3-week period in there. I mean, all that being said, we have several board meetings between now and then. We can, if there is some drastic drop in cases, in the level of transmissibility, then we could certainly revisit this at that time, just as we were going to do back at our November 22nd meeting. So.
And if cases continue to move let's call it skyrocketing, because that's what's happening. They predict 80% of people have had Omicron and might not even know about it. But if that's not leading to severity with illness and death and what have you, that there's no correlation of that with you, or there's no importance of, I mean, you're going to measure this basically only on cases.
I'm going to measure this on the fact that when students test positive with COVID, they need to quarantine. And I want to keep kids in school.
Okay. And just to be clear, you're also putting this motion forward regardless of what public health, Dane County.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions for Troy? Go ahead, Tim.
Can we go back to the map of Wisconsin? And this is for clarification. We are currently in the critically high category with probably half the state. It looks to me. And as it stands right now, Dane County is the highest vaccinated county in the state, and the only county that requires masking today. And yet, half of the state is in the exact same place that we are. What is the data showing us that high vaccine rates and high mask rates are accomplishing? If half the state is in the exact same place, and we are the only county with required masking and the highest vaccine rates in the state.
Are you asking that question to someone directly?
Yes, I'm asking Troy.
Okay.
So Tim, I guess the data that resonates with me is when I look back at, I think it was, maybe the November timeframe, and when you were to compare the case rates of children, I believe it was ages 5 to 12, in Dane County versus the rest of the state, there was a significant lower rate of COVID infection. That tells me that masking in schools is effective.
But today, that rate on that same group of kids went from 19% to 62%, and yet our rate significantly up. So the vaccine rates went significantly up, and yet the transmission rates also went significantly up. I'm just looking for a link between higher vaccine rates and masking and transmission. That's all I'm looking for.
I think Dr. Bergstrom would like to address that.
I can, but I bet Dr. Lakuta wants to too. A couple of things that I've been hearing, because I think those are really common questions, right? I think those are questions that we all have. And the first would be, we have to remember that the vaccine does not mean that you won't get it. It means that you won't be severely ill with it. And I think that's something that, we can all be very grateful for. And so the vaccination rate, you can see the people who are vaccinated are less likely to get it, but most importantly, they're less likely to have severe consequences for it. But the other piece is, I think one of the reasons that we are in the critically high category and others may not be, I don't necessarily think that's because, and I really would defer to doctors on this, and I am not that kind of doctor, all right? But it's because there may be just as much virus within the community. However, Dane County does a lot of testing. And consequently, there are more people who are testing, more positive cases. That doesn't mean there's more virus in the community. It means that it is being detected more often because of the increase in testing. So, this is determined in two ways. And the first is burden status. So that is the number of COVID cases per 100,000 people. So that comes from the fact that people are doing a lot of testing and a lot of cases are being uncovered. The other piece is trajectory. How much are the cases increasing over a 2-week period? So both of those things come into play when determining which level this is. And actually, our trajectory isn't as high as some other places, but we do have a high case count. I don't necessarily think that's because we have more virus.
Go ahead, Mary.
Thank you. And I think, Tim,
Yeah, you're next, Heather, okay?
Okay.
I think, Tim, what you're struggling with is we in Dane County don't have a wall around us, right? And so we're free to come and go, travel wherever we want, as it should be. Go outside, go unmasked when we're not in Dane County, and then we bring it back with us. I think the conversation here is about keeping our kids in person, in school, so that we don't have to go virtual. So when the transmission levels were lower, when the vaccines were more effective against the earlier strains, what we saw was the mask mandate did keep Dane County much lower than the rest of the state. I think somebody else has already mentioned that Omicron tends to have more breakthrough cases. And as a result, we're seeing a lot more transmission. But again, as Dr. Bergstrom has mentioned, they are much less severe for those who are vaccinated and even less severe for those who are additionally boosted. The key for me is knowing that masks not only work, but also impact the definition of how we need to determine who has to quarantine and who has to isolate. For me, if our stated goal, and if our goal really is to keep our students in school, in person, I don't think that it's reasonable for us to peel back masks at this point. Does that help?
I appreciate your perspective.
All right, Heather, you are next.
Yes. Okay. I guess I'm struggling a little bit why we are making this decision now. Looking at the calendar, we have a board meeting on January 24th, and my understanding is that Dane County goes until February 1st. And of course, I want to give everybody adequate time to plan. And so I love the idea that we're discussing this, but it does seem, I mean, I just hate to go through all of this. And then in 2 weeks, if Dane County extends the mask mandate, it was all for naught. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around why we're having this conversation right now. I'm hoping someone can shed some light on if we can turn this into more good to hear Dr. Bergstrom's presentation and good to food for thought. But I wouldn't know how to vote on this motion right now because it feels like we're looking way too far in the future. I guess that would be my initial comment.
And Heather, I'll address that in a couple pieces. One is we have a motion that currently sits on our books that if the mask mandate would go away, that we would move automatically by an action of the board that 7/12 was supposed to go mask-free today. So if that goes away and we have not acted, that is taking place. We also know that the Dane County Public Health Madison-Dane County Emergency Order is now before the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And we do not know when that action will take. So if the Supreme Court of Wisconsin takes away the Public Health Madison-Dane County, this board has an action that's currently in place that would take action. So that's why we're discussing it tonight. Doesn't mean everybody has to, and we've got a motion and a second on the floor. People can vote how they want to. So that's kind of the rationale, I think, for why we are discussing it tonight. But again,
Yep.
a motion is on the floor by a board member.
That's super helpful
Yep.
to understand. I guess my only follow-up thing would be, that helps me, but I just think, so I understand we have to have some sort of something. It just seems, it's a difficult thing for me to say March 7th, for example, just because that feels like there's a lot going to happen between now and March 7th.
Yeah,
So,
you can also offer
those
a
are my only
friendly,
comments for
yeah,
now.
you can also offer a friendly amendment if you want.
Okay, let me think about that. See if other people, if they have anything else, and we'll keep it moving.
Kevin,
For
and then
those clarifications.
Kevin is up, and then Mary.
Yeah, so, I mean, things have fast changed, right? On November 22nd, we first passed this resolution. We didn't know we'd be sitting here on the 10th of January with a totally different scenario. So, I mean, we could come up with a million different theoreticals of what may or may not happen between now and March. And I also have an issue that for 2 years we've been following public health, Madison, Dane County come hell or high water no matter what they say, and now all of a sudden we're not even going to wait to see where they come. We're not going to wait to see where the Supreme Court decision ends up. I mean, why are we dealing with these theoreticals when we can actually have a emergency board meeting to deal with it when we have some more clarity? And if we need to clean up a resolution that has dates that are in the past, that's one thing, but to move forward this, I just see no reason to do this whatsoever.
Mary, you're next.
So to some extent, I agree. I think I'm not sure that we need to set dates because it's throwing a dart at a board and you're blindfolded. But the other thing that's not in the motion on the table is I think we need to really consider when our staffing numbers are stable. I mean, we heard the OEA statement. We know that staffing has been a huge issue for months on end. And I would hate for us to push forward and make it worse. So I don't know whether you're open to a friendly amendment to include ensuring that our staffing numbers are stable, and I don't know exactly how to word that, but that would be one thing that I would like to add to that motion, and perhaps just leave it at when Dane County transmission rates are moderate or lower.
Yeah, and Mary, I wouldn't be opposed to adding that friendly amendment. My logic behind the moderate, using that moderate target is that I believe that when we hit that moderate level of community transmission, that we're going to be through the challenging part of this, and that our staff will not be much at risk. Is my logic, but as I said, I'm open to it.
No, I understand that logic, and I was thinking that may be the case, but it also may not be.
A couple things.
What I was thinking.
One is it's actually medium if you're going by DHS. I think Leslie had that. It's not moderate, it's medium if we're going by DHS. And then second, I know you potentially want to address the medium and the staffing because you had that in your slide.
I think honestly, when I was considering, or when we were putting forth the idea of peeling back a safety strategy when we reached the medium, was because by that point, I'm assuming, and remember, we all know that that's a difficult thing to do in this situation, that means that there will be considerably fewer cases overall, which means there will be considerably fewer staff who have to be absent because of a child care issue or their own illness or their child's illness. So I was thinking that the medium level would automatically lead to fewer staff disruptions.
I guess I want to say a couple things. I think this is congruent with the discussion we had a couple minutes ago about staffing and what we've decided to do for our staff. And I gave the example of the plate spinning. And one of the things that I like about a March date is the system is under complete stress right now. When you think about our staff, in terms of trying to have staff and actually getting them to be able to do their jobs and have prep time and have lunch, our administrators being able to administrate and not do staffing duty and recess duty. So we've got tremendous stress. And now you look at our kids in terms of mental health and trying to help address issues. We need time to stabilize the system. And that's why I like a March date, because even if we get to this place, our system needs to stabilize. So that's why I like potentially having the March dates, because we are already into the middle of January. And so this is a lot about COVID to me, but it's also about stabilizing our system. Everybody needs a breath and needs to be in a place where we're getting to where we all want to go. So any other discussion? Anna.
I support this amendment or this motion that Troy has stated, primarily because I do think that it makes sense for us to be considering removing some of these layered mitigation strategies when we're at those lower transmission categories. And so I think when we were first talking about this back in November, that was a friendly amendment I had actually proposed, was can we couple that with moderate or medium transmission? So I think that makes a lot of sense. It's logical. To me, that is makes a lot of sense. As far as the dates, I agree with some of the comments that it gives some certainty on when to expect that. And of course, as a board, if we see rates dropping dramatically in February or sooner than March, we always have the ability to put this back on the agenda if it's sooner than that and I guess, determine that. But I do like the idea of giving a date to look forward to with the hopes that we are in a position with medium transmission within Dane County. And I think it's something that makes a lot of sense to put us back in a position where we feel comfortable with where this policy stands without the potential of having some action turn us into a situation where we're showing up at school without a mask requirement in place sooner than when we would want to have that happen at this point in time. So I support this this motion.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Leslie, do you by any chance have the graph that you've shown us in the past, which shows the different levels, which would, define moderate and what have you? Is that available on any of your slides?
Let me look.
While you're looking for that, and maybe you need to go off live there, but I mean, I think, look, this is not a scientific panel we're sitting on here, but I think from the education all of us has had from reading and educating ourselves on this, I think we can agree that the Delta variant was more severe than the Omicron variant. I think that's a fact. I don't know if anyone can dispute that in terms of the severity of illness. So we're talking about theoreticals and baselines based on a variant that's changed. As they're saying, the virus is going to virus, right? We don't know what the next variant's going to be. It could cause our nose to turn red, right? I mean, so we're making policy based off that. I don't understand the reason to change this right now when we can call a meeting when we have more information. And again, if we need to modify it because we're worried about, public health on February 1st, changing their, actually, part of the policy is irrelevant because of the dates related to public health. So if that needs to be struck because it's irrelevant, fine. But why don't we deal with facts and deal with the situation at hand when we get there? I don't understand why we wouldn't be able to come up with March 7th 3 weeks from now, whenever February 1st comes around and we hear from public health. I mean, that's where I'm coming from. And the baseline is changing in terms of the data, right? The Delta, the Omicron, to whatever the heck the next variant is. This is what you want to see viruses do, by the way, is decrease in terms of its severity because it's trying to survive in the host. Spread faster, but less severity. And this is what you want to see happen. We should be happy about this.
Any other discussion? Mary, go ahead.
I just have one clarifying question because the conversation has been a little confusing. So the motion that you've put forth is should public health medicine Dane County mask mandate go away, then this will, right? Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yeah, so it basically mirrors the current policy that says except when not required by local, state, or federal.
Any other discussion? Okay.
Another clarifying point, and the mandate could go away either by deadline, February 1st or whatever it is, or by the state Supreme Court recognizing that PHMDC does not have the authority to provide a mandate. Is that correct? Okay.
Any further discussion? Kevin, go ahead.
Sorry, the other thing I want to address, the other thing I want to address is, again, not to dive into specifics of the policy because we're talking about the policy and not how it's implemented, but I think we do need to take a look at some of the feedback that's coming even from the CDC in terms of cloth masks, for example, not being effective. And we have in our policy that these are perfectly fine. And the CDC has come out and said, especially against the Omicron variant, that they're not fine. So I think there's specific things within our policy in terms of how we're implementing the policy that are important to look at and to not have our head in the sand about because we're not being consistent then. And the same can be said about this mask I'm wearing right here, right? I mean, we should all be wearing N95s. I see we have a few. That's the best, there is in terms of readily available masks. So all I'm asking is that the overall policy be looked at as well in terms of the updated CDC guidelines.
All right, we'll make that note so that, go ahead, Gina, did you want to comment on that?
I do, and that's something that Dr. Bergstrom and I have talked a lot about, and we've also consulted with UW because and I'll just say as a parent, the advice that we've been given is that the best mask for your student to wear is the one they'll consistently wear that fits them well. And so we have talked about that in terms of if we required the KN95 or the N95, would students wear that consistently all day? And so, I would just say anecdotally as a parent, we have tried that given our situation in our household, and we have not been effective in accomplishing that. But we do have masks that we're really comfortable with that she will wear all day. And even at home because she doesn't take them off. So, we're struggling with that. It's a wonderful question and something that we have been wrestling with, and we have been talking about. If you go through our hallways, you will see an increased use by staff of the KN95 or the N95 masks. And so that's also something we have talked about making available to our staff if they prefer to have those. So I think is that balance that we're always looking at. But please know that we are talking about that every day and following that science. And Dr. Bergstrom is seeking that feedback from our medical experts.
Okay. Any other, or I will ask Katie to, oh, sorry, Heather.
I just have one question. So let's say we vote on this, and let's say either the mask mandate expires or gets overruled, or, let's say we somehow miraculously get to that medium level on February 5th. Are we able to revisit this and put this on a future action item? So I think what Kevin and I are kind of getting at is maybe this is too, forward-looking, given that things are ever-changing. If this passes, are we able to revisit and kind of readjust it if things are going really well? Should motion pass?
Yes. So in terms of what has been policy in terms of Robert's Rules of Order in this board, that if you vote in the affirmative, you can ask to reconsider at a next board meeting. Past that, you have to email the board president and ask with 10 days notice for it to be put on the agenda as an action item. But what Dr. Bergstrom and I have talked about is that this will be an action item every board meeting so that we can have this conversation and update of where things are at.
So no matter if this passes today and things are going really well and we would want to revisit, we would have the opportunity to do that.
That is correct. And it also gives our administration guidelines of kind of what we're looking for in terms of moderate, in terms of the recommendations that they would come to the board with.
Yep, got it. Okay, I'm set. That helps.
Yep, go ahead, Kevin.
Krista, but to be clear, the only ones that can change the policy are the ones that vote in the affirmative. So
For one meeting.
For one meeting
Yes,
only?
and then
Okay.
past that, it's open because of enough time will have passed. Gina and I can refer to you as a parliamentarian, that one meeting, and then if you vote in affirmative. So the next meeting that we have on the 24th, if you voted in the affirmative, if this passes and you vote in the affirmative, you can ask for a reconsideration. Past that meeting, the floor is open for new motions from any board member.
Yeah, that's a very important clarification. Thank you.
And that's always been the case. So, and again, with this motion, everybody can have the freedom to make a friendly amendment or vote up or down. And if it fails, then another motion can come on the floor like it always is. We operate by Robert's Rules of Order, so that's where we're at. Final. Heather, anything? Any other discussion or questions?
No, thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right, Katie, could you please call the roll?
Where do we stand with the wording of the motion? Has the friendly amendment of staffing been added, or is it not being added?
Could you restate the sentence you wanted added?
Do you have the language screen?
So I'm paraphrasing because that's based on my experience. So when Dane County transmission rates are medium or lower and staffing numbers are stable, then it goes into your bullet point.
My question would be who determines stable? I think Dr. Bergstrom put on her staff that she is the determination of stable, and that medium she feels like that would be. And again, we can always revisit that. So it's your choice if you view it as a friendly. Okay. All right, Katie, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Pankratz? Yes. Ms. Bijak? Yes. Ms. Garrison?
No.
Mr. Maring?
No.
Dr. Lakuda? Yes. Mr. LeBrun? No. Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 4-3. All right, so now we are up to action item C5, Girls Hockey Cooperative Agreement. I will turn that over to Dr. Bergstrom.
Thank you.
I actually need to jump off. Is there anything I need to do?
Nope, just let us know that Heather is now leaving the meeting at 8 o'clock. Thanks, Heather.
Probably think.
Thank you. And hello, Ms. Spencer Grant, our athletic director. She's here tonight to talk about the agreement for our girls hockey cooperative and answer any questions you may have related to that. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Spencer Grant.
Everybody, thanks for having me. So the WA requires every 2 years a new co-op agreement to be signed and approved by both school boards of any school participating in the co-op and then also by the conference. So before us tonight, we have our application for our girls hockey co-op. Stoughton serves as our host school. There are currently 7 school districts who participate in the co-op. We have about 20 female student athletes on that team, 4 of whom this year are OHS students. All are underclassmen, if my memory is correct. So there's the potential that they'll stick with it and maybe some middle schoolers join them in the future. Let's think. We do have our Badger Conference meeting on Wednesday of this week, so I believe it is on the agenda for Wednesday in terms of if schools will approve it or not. I don't think it'll be an issue, as many of the schools in our conference kind of are a part of this team. I mean, are there any questions that kind of you guys have for me about kind of the makeup of the co-op? Yeah.
So how many games, compared to the boys hockey program, how many games does the girls hockey program play? And is the season start and end about the same time?
So start dates and end dates are identical. Big difference on the girls' side is there's not as many teams who participate. I think current numbers are about 28 teams in the whole state, which is why there's a lot more co-ops on the female side than there are on the male side. There's only one division, so that's a difference on the boys' side. They have, I think it's close to 90 teams, so they do have a Division I and a Division II. I believe our schedule this year on the girls' side had about 21 contests, whereas on our boys' side we do have a little bit more. I think we are hosting 24 on the boys' side. I schedule for boys. I do not schedule for the girls, as that does go through our host school at Stoughton. Or I should say Mr. Carr helps schedule most of our boys' schedule, but in the future it'll be me.
Additional questions for our athletic director at her second meeting, I think, at the board? Thank you. Welcome. Any additional questions? Go ahead, Troy.
Do you know where the girls hockey trains at? Do they always train at Stoughton?
I believe they do all of their practices and games, home games.
Okay, so they don't ever use they use the facility here in Oregon, to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
I don't know that they'd be able to get ice here in Oregon, but it could certainly be approached as a question.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that would be an interesting consideration. I mean, knowing that there's, you said 4 of 20 are our girls, if that could be rotational somehow. But I guess I would like to take this opportunity to talk about a related but maybe a little different topic, and that's the cost that we're paying for the boys hockey program, the ice rental fees that we have. Looking at the data, we pay in Oregon the highest of all schools in southern Wisconsin region. In fact, our total ice bill is 2.3 times higher than the average for these schools. The ice rate per hour is the absolute highest of all those schools. And our skater fee that our athletes are required to pay is 25% higher than the average. I absolutely fully support our hockey program, and I have no problem with a private business making a fair and reasonable profit. But as a board, we are accountable to the taxpayers in this community, and these fees are, in my opinion, they're tremendous and completely out of line of fair market price for ice time. So I want to put that out there for, I guess, future reference on that contract with the Oregon facility. If anybody has some additional background on that, I'd love to know more background on the pricing there, but to me, the data that I've looked at just, it's pretty eye-opening.
Andy, I don't know if you want to comment on historical fees, why we pay more or so much, because I know like for golf, we get, Bergamot lets us use the golf course for free, Foxborough does for free or very limited, and why we're charged so much for hockey, for the center? Or maybe, Tim, you may have background information on that. I know your kids on hockey.
Tim might have better information than I do on regarding that. All I can, guess is that the operational cost associated with a hockey rink is significantly more than perhaps some of the other operations that are out there. But Tim, I know you were involved in that.
Yeah, all I can say is when the rink moved to a for-profit business, I completely lost track of, and that's what's happened. The rink was a nonprofit organization, and so it didn't generate a profit. And now it is a for-profit organization. Someone purchased the rink from the nonprofit and is running it as a profitable organization. And I don't know what the fees are, the ice time fees are anymore, so I really can't help there.
Any other discussion or conversation about the girls' ice hockey agreement or a related hockey?
So from a district expense, Andy, has the cost of on a per player basis changed dramatically over the last 5 years?
Based on some information that I looked at earlier, I think it has increased. I don't know if I would say significantly, but it has increased. And this is just the 1920 season, right? So over the past 5 years, I think there has been increases. I don't know how you'd want to characterize that, but we could look at that.
And I was just wondering if maybe because the players who play, their families out of pocket pay on top of what the district pays for ice time. And so my question is what the player is paying offsetting the additional cost for ice time, or is ice time and the player fee gone up significantly? I honestly don't know, so it is a question.
Yeah, I mean, I can't comment on the history. I don't know the history. I just know what we're currently paying, and it's the points I made earlier is that it's much higher than the average in southern Wisconsin, and I don't understand why that would be.
And does the district pay for ice time?
Yes.
And do they pay in addition to ice time?
So there you lost me.
Well, the district pays for ice time, plus we pay for all the ancillary expenses associated with any sport
coaching,
program.
Sure.
Yeah.
Equipment, including that athletes don't come to the table with coaches, all that sort of thing.
So it should be easy to break down what the district spends per player in every sport, right? And so do you have that information, Troy?
Not with me. I guess the part that would be missing is, obviously we have facilities we have soccer facilities and football facilities, and the costs associated with those would be difficult to calculate.
Sure.
Because they have multiple purposes.
Absolutely. But I would imagine that the cost of a football game, for instance, the facility cost of a football game is buried in our operating cost,
Correct.
Whereas we don't own the ice facility.
Correct.
And so we are paying out of pocket for that facility. Okay. All right.
That is true.
Mary, did you have any questions or comments?
Well, and I guess I'm wondering, and obviously I'm not sure it would be an appealing option, but are there other locations where our teams could go to get ice time that might be more affordable for our taxpayers and our families?
Our team used to do all their practices and all their games in cooperation with McFarland. They used to play all the games, all the practices. In fact, we had a combined team with McFarland, so everything happened in McFarland before the ice arena was here.
Brittany, go ahead. You wanted to comment?
Yeah, so I happen to have a little bit of a hockey background. So one of the big issues is hockey ice times. and what are kind of considered the more ideal ice times. One of the things they've actually done here locally is we actually get a little bit of a discount for any ice that's purchased in the mornings. So we have utilized a few morning practices that wasn't with the purpose of saving money. It just kind of worked out scheduling wise. But it is about $75 cheaper per hour to go before school than after school for us. In terms of neighboring communities, I don't know what sort of ice we would get. When I was coaching high school girls, we had a before school, we would have like an 8:30 p.m. I mean, it was all over the board, nothing consistent. So if we went to another community, I can just about guarantee we'd lose the after school slot, which is, I think, easiest and most desirable for families. But again, then we're balancing the cost associated with it too.
Just a couple comments. I think I want to be careful with the agenda that we have on the agenda. This is about the Girls Cooperative Hockey Agreement, which is not, in the discussion that we're delving into, is not germane to what is on the agenda, but it's a very important topic, one that's very close to our families who are in the hockey program, who are paying fees. And so what I would suggest is that we do a little bit more homework into this, and in a future agenda, we come back to the board and talk a little bit more about what we're doing for hockey in terms of what our families are paying, where they're skating. There's a lot of complex information because, we could be saving money, but we don't want our kids traveling to McFarland at 5 in the morning, right? So let's plan to have a future discussion about the hockey program and get data that this board can look at so we can make some good decisions. But what is before us tonight is allowing our girls hockey team to be part of a cooperative team so that they can play. So let's talk about that and get a motion on the floor, and then know that we will have that on a future agenda in the near future, that we can have a hockey discussion because it's a very important topic. Okay?
I'll move approval of the cooperative contract for girls hockey.
Is there a second? Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Katie, can you call the roll?
Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuta? Yes. Ms. Bijak? Yes. Mr. Maring? Yes. Mr. Pankratz? Yes. Ms. Flanagan?
Yes. Motion.
The only update from policy is that our January meeting will need to be rescheduled due to another meeting conflict that has come up. So more to come on that. I don't have any other update other than we'll reach out with the new revised date for that.
All right. Thank you. B, vision steering. Troy.
I do not have any updates.
Okay. C, Worth Woods. Tim.
Yes, we had a meeting of the larger Worth Woods group this past week. Things are coming along nicely. We had hoped to have our strategic plan ready by our next meeting. It will not be ready by then. We have another meeting that is being scheduled at the end of the month with a draft of the it's 3 of the 4 increments or subcommittees. The one subcommittee that hasn't met formally yet is the Fundraising Committee, but they're waiting for the other 3 pieces to come together. And so we should have a draft of that strategic plan by the end of the month and a final strategic plan to bring to this committee a month later.
Great, thank you. D, Wellness, we do not have, the Wellness Committee did not meet, so we will not have that report. So moving on to E, information items. I'll turn 1, 2, and 3 back over to Dr. Bergstrom.
And contrary to the earlier things we were discussing, there's a lot of really fun stuff happening in schools too. So let's talk about that a little bit. We all know that we're in the midst of our visioning and strategic planning, and this framework has guided us, and we're really making some significant progress. So our portrait of a graduate work was sent back to our focus groups with a video and a form asking them for additional input. And so that's been coming up prior to winter break and this week. And so they've been really giving us some very thoughtful input that I think will be very beneficial to the committees that are reviewing this. The staff is ongoing as far as staff input. We've definitely heard from some leadership teams, but because this is so important, we want to go back to the broader staff in a meaningful way and really talk to them about what this is involved or what's involved in it. The students, I think the Superintendent Council will be the first place that will go for feedback on this, and I'm really eager to talk about that. That'll be one of the things that I would like to talk about. Otherwise, believe me, they already have a list for me, and that's a good thing. And then from the community, we'll be collecting additional input in winter and probably into spring too. There might be a couple of different collection points that could include some in-person community engagements, because wouldn't that be nice to actually be in a room with people and have conversations about this kind of thing? So I'm excited about that. And then we move on to teaching and learning, and that's where we have some fun stuff to talk about. And you know how it is all connected. What we do in the classroom is very connected to students and staff and the mental health and wellness and physical health and wellness, right? It all comes together. And despite the challenges, good things are happening. So here's an example. This one is kind of near and dear to my heart as a former social studies teacher. But this spotlight on learning is 7th grade geography. And who we have here is a curator of collections from the Milwaukee Public Museum, talking with a group of students in 7th grade geography about artifact repatriation, right? So what should be given back to other places because it may have been taken in a time of colonialism or something along that line. So what an exciting thing for a group of 7th graders to be talking about, to build their critical thinking skills. I just think that's fantastic, and I'm really glad that we reached out to an expert like the curator of collections from the Milwaukee Public Museum. This comes from Ms. Stoller's class. Pretty cool. And the next spotlight on learning has to do with art. This is a 3rd grade art project that really focuses in on they're studying Saul Lewitt, an American artist who had a plan for his art for other artists to be able to make it, because it's about the art process. And so helping kids understand the artistic process and how things come together and how it contributes to the greater whole, that's exciting stuff. And then band and orchestra. We have had some guest musicians that have been a part of enhancing our student experience. And I was actually able to be in class to see Katie Ernst. And wow, was that fun, where she was playing her bass and singing even some original jazz music written by Katie. So that was a really great experience for our middle school and our high school students. We had a composer coming into the high school band class, Julie Giroux, and Danny Mitchell, a composer, songwriter, singer, and pianist for middle school band. So students being able to see people who are incorporating this passion, for all of these people, it's into their profession, but could also be just incorporating it into your life as an adult, where music continues to play a role in people's lives long past their high school career. Super exciting. We also wanted to give a little spotlight out to our art department. And this is an example of something from OHS Art Fundamentals. You see our Mr. Derek, happy to have him in the classroom, showing some students. I can't even begin to imagine exactly what's being shown related to the portrait of John Belushi. I read about it once because it was really cool. Can't remember now. But just happy to see his smiling face back at the high school. And then the home construction project. This is a really unique opportunity. When other people hear that we actually build a house, our students actually build a house, when other districts hear that, that is unusual. Our students are learning a variety of skills, and the construction skills that they're focusing in on really is just a portion of it, right? Because they're learning so much being a part of such a large project that comes together to serve the family that buys the house. So that's exciting stuff. And we know that this is also has been and will be the subject of news spotlights, just because it's so cool and so unique. Keep on moving? Keep on. Okay. Superintendent report. So kindergarten enrollment, that for our students for the 22-23 school year, little ones have to have their 5th birthday on or before September 1st. So that project has started and the enrollments are coming in. There we go. I don't know how many people who are watching are aware, but our high school assistant soccer coach on the boys team received really a very prestigious award. It's the Northern region. I think there's only is it between 4 and 6 awards given in the entire country, and our coach Kevin May was given this coaching award this year. And I think what really touches me about it is what head soccer coach Chris Mitchell wrote about Coach May and his impact on young people. Because what he wrote, how he described the work of Coach May, that's everything we want for the people who have such a significant influence on our students. Whether it's on the soccer field or the swimming pool or the chemistry class. People like Coach May are exactly what we hope for our students. So congratulations to him. And then our swim team, boys swim, they were champions at the Thunderbird Invitational on December 29th in Baraboo. Pretty cool picture. And then Coach Hookstead and the OHS wrestling team had their first victory at the Badger West Conference dual meet over Sauk Prairie. So this was Coach Hookstead's first career win as a head coach. So congratulations to all the students involved and to Coach Hookstead. And then this was fun too. The OHS had a cheer camp, a youth camp, and they performed at the halftime game at the girls' game on Friday. So that was a fun way to bring in a lot of students to have them be a part of OHS athletics. And then Friends of Oregon School District did another round of Cool Grants. And Cool Grants are pretty exciting because it's about ensuring opportunities for all of our students. And so teachers submit applications that are reviewed by a committee of teachers and FOSD representatives. And then the people who are awarded the grants are surprised with big giant checks. That's always a fun thing to do. Principals work at keeping it a secret so that the teachers are a little surprised that day. And you can see here we had Michelle Minter at RCI and Velvet Holmes at Forest Edge is actually on the computer that Miss Olander is holding. So you have that $2,000 check for 3D pens and 3D doodlers. And then over at the high school, you see another giant check awarded to our Avid program. And Brandy Husley, the Avid coordinator and one of the Avid teachers, submitted the grant. And it's to bring in speakers for an Avid leadership conference. So for our students. So it's a fun day when you're able to walk around and hand out giant checks that are based on the generosity of our community and the organization of FOSD to all do good things for our kids. And then Sunday, this is a strange thing that it's a Sunday, but Sunday was School Resource Officer Recognition Day. So thank you, Officer Karatko. Thank you for everything you do. We wanted to make sure that we tipped our hat to him and all SROs today. And then, as I had mentioned earlier, we had 34 students say they're interested in the Advisory Council. And we talked about how it's establishing two-way communication between administration and students to give feedback to administration and to give them, meaning me and all the different people who will be attending with me, insight into what's important to our students. And our students are responsible for attending meetings and keeping updated and being willing to keep learning about these important topics. And then they will also be, representatives of the group will be responsible for attending Board of Education meetings. And that's pretty great too. And then more music because our kids are pretty amazing musicians. Congratulations to Lorenz Fratkin-Annan, honorable mention in the Madison Symphony Orchestra Youth Concerto Competition. So congratulations. We also had students make, as you can see, they're holding them. Students made cards for veterans that were sent overseas to Saudi Arabia. And so the picture you see here are our troops in Saudi Arabia and the 115th Fighter Wing in Saudi Arabia holding up cards that were made for them by Oregon School District students. Okay, to end it all up, we had a little impromptu concert at Netherwood Knoll because there were a few students who weren't able to attend the regularly scheduled conference due to illness. So Netherwood just decided to have another one. And they had it during the school day, and this is pretty cool. And Katie's going to play it for you.
Awesome little concert that we're doing here. Okay. Our last song this evening will be Here Comes the Snow. Also, Here Comes the Snow has some dance moves. Yes, how Julia. I'm not. No. We'll dance along with you. Yeah, you're talking.
And how could that not make you happy, right? So we thought we'd end with that. And as I said earlier, our kids are champions. They're pretty amazing.
All right, thank you. I appreciate you and Erica taking the time to really share with us all the good things that are happening in our school district. We deal with a lot of heavy issues here in the meeting, and it's really nice for us to see all the good things that are happening, and a credit to our teachers and our staff. Okay, F, closing, future agenda. So I want to be clear what's on the future agenda, that we have asked for a review of hockey fees, so that's a good thing. So I want people to understand what we're doing is really reviewing that so we can make sure we're serving our hockey parents and families and students there. And then next we will also continue to have 565 and 566 on the agenda as things develop. So we've taken a step tonight, but we know those things are going to change as this has changed. So those are the two things on the future agenda. If anyone else has items for agenda, please do let me know. Now moving to checkout, I will go around the room. Tim.
Nothing in particular. I appreciate the wrap up at the end. I love to see education in action. I was not a kid who, really understood all the reasons to be in school when I was in school. And I was that kid who asked often, how am I ever going to use this? And so the wrap up is a great reminder to those kids who are building homes and listening to a jazz vocalist. The Formula One Club came to our Optimist Club a few weeks ago. It's a small group of kids, boys and girls, who are designing race cars, and that's how I'm going to use this in the future. And so I really appreciate bringing that home, Leslie, so thank you.
Anna. Kevin. Mary. Troy. Just have a couple things. One, I want to make sure to thank Gina and let Fitchburg Pharmacy know that we really appreciate the work that you've done to set up the testing. That's really important. And Fitchburg Pharmacy, it's a really hard time for businesses too, so we appreciate them. And I saw the cars in line this morning at Netherwood Knoll as I was stopping by, and it's really cold out there, and for them to be out there helping our families get tested is really important. So please, Fitchburg Pharmacy, thank you for doing that for us too. I also wanted to draw particular attention to the appreciation station that Erica and our staff is, and if you have a chance, go to OregonSD.org and drop a line for our staff, teachers or staff or paras or special ed. They would appreciate that note. So that's the appreciation station on OregonSD.org. So thank you, everyone. Lots of good discussion. We don't always have to agree, but we do it in a civil manner, and I really appreciate that. And we will continue to have these discussions every meeting. This changes. We know it's all really important. We're all trying to put people's best interests, so I appreciate all the discussion, all the questions. That's really important for us as a board. Thank you for the administration for their work, and so I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned at 8:31. Thank you, everybody.